Good evening, cult members, and welcome to Pop Culture Cult. I'm Sean,
I'm Janice.
and welcome to our discussion reaction review of The Last of Us, episode 7. I had to do math, or 7. This one's called Left Behind. For those of you who are new around here, we just watched the episode. We're instantly reacting and discussing what happened in the episode. We are not watching along. It's just a thing. There's plenty of people doing that. I'd rather spend more time talking about the meaning of what they're doing than actually just going, ooh, pretties.
Not so much. Well, I mean, there was,
The lights coming out was fucking bitching.
the mall.
Of them all. Okay, so this is essentially the DLC from the game. Now, I have not played the DLC. This is the one thing of the Last of Us universe that I have not played. I've played the first one. I have played the second one most of the way through, but I know that story all the way through. I did not play the DLC.
So this was a separate game, or
This
just
was
a
a-
side quest?
This was a side quest add-on later on kind
okay.
of conversation.
Right. Okay.
To kind of give Ellie more backstory to make us be even more emotionally impacted by the story of Ellie.
Right.
But I know the actual story pretty damn well.
Yeah.
Because I've watched the walkthroughs. I've been through the whole process of what this actually is, and then so that's my point of view. From her point of view, she's just watching along. She hasn't played the game. We haven't talked about the game. I've been very quiet about the game because I want her to experience the whole process as we go along.
Right. As a show, not a game.
As a show is not a game.
Yep.
And all that stuff. So, another week of ripping our hearts out.
Right. Well, I mean, we had to get here, right? Because Ellie's been bit. We knew that she'd been bit from episode 2.
1, I think, yeah.
Was it 1?
Yeah.
And we knew that there was a friend that got left behind,
Right.
and so we had to do this. It makes sense for now, just because of Joel has been stabbed. He's like, leave me, just go. You need to get to where you need to go so that they can use you to fix all this. But she's not gonna do that, and so this is kind of why
Yeah.
she's not gonna do that.
Yeah.
Right? She's not gonna leave another, and it's kind of a continuation of the ending of the last episode, where she was like, everybody has left me.
I was just gonna say that. Yep.
So here's why.
Yeah.
Here's why everybody has left me.
And I love that they took this beat at this point in the story to go back and tell that DLC, to tell why Ellie made the comment she made the week before, the previously, with everybody has left me.
Right.
Everybody I cared about has left me except for you. And also kind of Ellie's emotional state as we sit right now, because I, as a game player, know who Ellie is, and so I know that she is gay and has feelings for someone, and especially involved. That's a major part of the second game. But it's to spend time with Riley and have this moment of joy that Ellie hasn't really had in her entire life is really, really important. And that person that she cared about most in her life has been lost because she showed love and affection to Ellie. And now you have Joel, someone who has shown love and affection for her, a different love and affection, but still love and affection. And now he is in a position of being gone, not because he's been bitten, but just because he's been stabbed and was a dummy and pulled it out.
Right.
But her deciding to stay to try to save him, we needed to have that moment.
Yeah.
Moment.
Yeah. You need to understand. I mean, and Ellie has grown up, has been born in and grown up in this world. So for her to say, I've lost everyone, well, I don't know. Does the game ever touch on her parents?
No, but I do think that that's actually coming because the the, the lady who plays Ellie in the game is playing Ellie's mom.
Okay.
But I just don't know where that's coming. I think that's
Right.
coming soon.
Because they never, so far, have never talked
And
about her parents.
and that's something that happens in the game. But they don't talk about her parents.
right.
It's just kind of where she is currently.
Yeah.
It's much more about Joel's backstory, and that's why the DLC was so important because we at least got some of Ellie's backstory.
Right. Because you're like, okay, was she hatched? I mean, how did she appear? She says nothing about her parents, and Riley actually talks about in this episode.
You ever watched a movie and thought, like, this is just visually amazing, and I just love the way it looks, and the colors are amazing? Well, our friends over at Movie Palette have come up with these great pieces of art that you could put up on your wall to show your love of movies without really necessarily being overly dramatic about it. Think of a movie barcode kind of thing, where you can look at the colors and know what the movie is, but it's very, very subtle. If you know us, we are into Tron Legacy. The music and the lights and the color itself is just amazing. Just to give you an idea of what they have, go to moviepalette.com, find your own personal favorite movie, your movie color palette, and have it hang on your wall. At checkout, put in Pop Culture 15 to get 15% off. Thank you, Movie Palette, for sponsoring this video. Link is in the description down below. And don't forget, use Pop Culture 15 at checkout to get 15% off your order.
You don't know this. You don't understand this. I actually knew my parents,
Right.
and that Ellie didn't understand this or whatever. So you at least get the idea that Ellie was taken away from, or her parents were taken away from her when she was very, very little.
Very, very, very. Yes, yes. I think Riley said in this episode that she turns 17 soon, and her first post is to watch the sanitation group to make sure that the shit is being picked up correctly. That's how they address it in the show, so that's how I'm going to address it here. But the idea that she's 17, that she's been through the Fedra camps, the education system, and in that process, she has learned that the fascism that is Fedra is bad, and that having a proper freedoms that the Fireflies actually want. Again, the definition of freedom is very loose within this game because we had the freedom that the freedom fighters in Kansas City the last couple of weeks were dealing with, and it's because Fedra there was being oligarchy kind of bad kind of version.
Yeah.
And so their version of freedom is not to be under that ridicule, but to do their own version of that.
Right. Well, and it's harder in this DZ. What do they call it? No,
A QC.
The zone
Yeah.
that they're in, because Fedra does appear to be better, right? They're not.
Yes.
They're not the Kansas City version, and the chief or whatever even kind of says that to her, like, do we are warm in the winter and we're cool in the summer, and you've got a cushy life, and so why wouldn't you want this, right? And Riley's kind of coming in and like, but they're still bad. Yeah, and trying to get that across to Ellie, because she's like, why would I want to come join the Fireflies? They're terrorists. They're killing people when I can go, be warm in the winter and cool in the summer and have everything that I want. So in this instance, it's actually a harder decision. Where in Kansas City, it's very black and white. You
Right,
would
right.
not, although then the rebels are almost as bad as Fedra, just on the other.
I'm glad they spent time with that in the last couple of weeks with what happened in Kansas City, Pittsburgh within the game, but
Right,
Kansas City
right,
specifically in the show. I'm glad they spent that time because the that version, that definition, that conversation is very different in each place,
yeah,
and how each individual area is handling everything, which is part of the reason why the Fireflies are trying to do what they do. They want one central government to come
right,
in and be the overall kind of leaders. I want to say the Fireflies want and one overall presidential
right,
cabinet kind of
right,
overall group running everything to dictate to each individual QC of this is the way you treat your people.
right,
But because Fedra has been siloed into each individual QC, each I've been calling them warlords. Each warlord of each individual QC has been running it as they want,
right,
which is both good and or bad. And I really liked that they spent time with Quan, Sergeant Quan. I think is
right, right.
what his title was. Here, like he's actually trying to be a good person
Hmm.
within the system,
Hmm.
but he tells Ellie that you can either be the one watching the guys shovel shit, or you can be the leader and actually eat well and do stuff.
Right.
And it's an important thing for Ellie to kind of have to spend that moment of a us the audience spending time with her, showing her that she actually is very smart, very capable, very able to do everything that she needs to do to survive in the outside world of the QC,
Right.
but also that the QC itself, there actually are good people trying to do good things. And
Right.
I'm glad that they actually spent that time after we had spent all this time with what happened in Kansas City and how bad everything was
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. And well, and then you've kind of got the complication of um Joel's brother,
Tommy,
Tommy, of the town
commune,
or commune or
yeah,
whatever, where
the Jackson, yeah,
they live, that and it's almost I would say it's kind of an allegory for, like, the United States first becoming a country, maybe like in the 1800s when California was out in the wild wild west, and Washington D.C. really didn't have a whole lot of control out there, and so there
it
were a
took
lot
4 days
of,
to get a message out there.
yeah,
Yeah,
there was a lot of, you know sheriffs running the town, and you could even make it even broader and say, the world, that countries like the U.S. and the UK are trying to go around saying the way we do it is the
it's the best
best.
way. Yeah, yeah,
But then there's these little dictators in Haiti, or Cuba, or whatever, that
yeah.
are in Africa, that are, doing their own little thing. It's very,
It, that's part of the reason why the show has been so good is that it's been putting a spotlight on like that kind of conversation that kind of like each each individual country, each individual part of at least here in the states tries to run itself
yeah,
its own special way. And I'm not saying that the Firefly way is right. I'm not saying that the dictator side is right either. But it's been very interesting to have that conversation back and forth of what are the positives and negatives to both sides of
right.
that conversation.
Well, and the end of the world, the end of the world doesn't change anything.
Nope.
People will still go back and do the same
Yeah.
things over and over and over again.
And that's one of the things that the game does so well is that it shows that there are actually good people in the world. That's the um, Bill and Frank episode. There
Hmm.
actually is good people, even if they're different, or with what Tommy's doing in Jackson, or what we got with um, uh, Sam and his brother. Like
Hmm.
there are actually good people out there trying to survive and do their thing. And then there's people like what was her name? Elizabeth or whatever from Kansas City who actually had darkness in her heart and was
Right.
actually doing, was already doing things that were
Yeah.
bad. This episode, though, also gives us a moment to have another budding romance between Riley and Ellie, and that Riley did actually care for Ellie. She actually did have feelings for Ellie.
Yeah.
But they're also and Ellie, I think, is 14 at this point in time, and I think, and then Riley's like 17. So
Right.
they're close in age, but they're also at that age where they just don't know. They just don't know. Like they just don't know who they are as a person, let
Yeah.
alone how they. Why am I feeling this way for this person? And so having that, like spending that time again to show that my affection, my love for you, I want to make you happy before I have to pull your heart out to go do something else.
Right.
And then having that heart, having all of that conversation and having that um moment of happiness ruined by, oh yeah, the real world is still the real world. And I just love that Riley spent this entire episode just trying to make Ellie happy before she left.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love like Bella Ramsey is killing it in this show. How she is not getting Emmy nomination is beyond me. But I said that about The Great, and nobody watched The Great except for the two of us apparently. And what Nicholas Hoult and Ellie Fanning were doing in that
Right.
show was
Yeah.
just amazing.
Yeah.
But what Bella's doing, like just moments of like stopping and looking up at her with puppy dog eyes.
Yeah.
And then when Storm Reed is the one who plays Riley in this episode. Now we know Storm from Wrinkle in Time, but she's probably more known for what she did in Euphoria. But whenever Riley would turn back over to her, Bella was like, "Oh, I love you." Okay, never mind. And it's just just to spend that time building up that pent up tension of when we finally get to the kiss
Yeah.
and they actually kiss each other and they pause and they say, "Okay, now what?"
Yeah.
And Riley's like, "I don't know. We'll figure it out."
Yeah.
It's just it's the other end of Bill and Frank. Bill and Frank, we spent the time with their whole process of their life together.
Yeah.
We spent only a few moments of them actually becoming a couple. This is the two of them, Riley and Ellie, like spending their time actually like figuring out, oh yes, I do have feelings for this person, and that person has the same feelings for me, and what that could mean going forward.
Right.
And then
it doesn't matter.
and it doesn't matter. And I love at the end, after they both get bit, that they actually have a moment where Riley's like, "We can kill ourselves now,
Yeah.
or we can stay together as long as we can."
Yeah.
Which is the Bill and Frank conversation. Bill and Frank decided to spend every last moment they could together until Frank just couldn't go on
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
And so it's a nice parallel between that story that we love so much, that this show nailed behind us, that love does exist, this passion for another person still, that connection for another person still exists in this post-apocalyptic world. That episode we love so much, here's another example
Mhm.
of, hey, you can actually love somebody after everything happens, but the real world is there.
Mm-hmm.
And that real world and that real struggle is still there. And if you're dumb teenagers, you're going to get yourself in trouble.
Yeah. I don't know if you're dumb. Just everybody. I don't know if you're
Yeah.
dumb teenagers.
I don't say dumb teenagers because they were. It's always a story's trope that the teenagers go off and they find true love, or they find
They
some
just let their
passion,
guard down.
and they let
were
their guard down.
just
Yeah.
they were just having fun. I mean, anybody. It happens to adults
Yeah.
too in this world. It's just kind of a proving that you can't let your guard down ever. Even and it's even harder for teenagers or for kids because they just want to be kids. They just want to be teenagers. And and for adults, it's a little bit more. It's a little bit easier, but then you can still have the same thing.
Yeah.
You get wrapped up in in a relationship with a lover or just another connection, another person,
Yeah.
where you get wrapped up in that and forget that there's like all this going on
And
outside.
and you brought that up, and my first thought was what Joel and Ellie went through last week at Colorado State at the when
Right.
the Raiders were
Right.
there.
They're just goofing around,
Just
whatever, and then
right,
all of
playing
a
with the
sudden,
monkeys and
yeah,
trying to find out what happened to the Fireflies, and then the Raiders show up and
yeah,
they attack Joel, and Joel takes care of them, but then he's slips for half of a second.
yeah.
And then he pulls it out, which is again we've had a whole conversation. You pull it out, you leave it in, and they figure it out. But it's just very it's the show has been constantly showing us here's what one version of what love is or relationship is in this world with Joel and Tess, and then we get another one with Bill and Frank, and then with Sam and why can I remember their names from the that that story arc, but like a brother's love
Hmm.
and what like if they keep giving this different definitions of what love
Hmm.
is because Joel's love for Ellie tells him to push her away at the beginning of this episode because he knows he's done for, and we spend this episode realizing that why Ellie decides to stay and why Ellie decides to take care of him, and while and sewing him up like bare, like just no anesthetic, no whiskey, no
Well,
nothing, but
you got to do what you got to do.
you gotta do what you gotta do. But all of this episode, for me, all of this episode, Ellie, Joel telling Ellie to leave, and her going up the stairs, and they doing the full flashback of Ellie and Riley and everything, and then Ellie deciding to do whatever she can to save Joel, and then she comes back down, and Joel wraps his hand around Ellie like as an okay, as I'm there. That comment that it's unspoken, like it's that show don't tell storytelling. Him grabbing her hand, giving her the okay to do something, that sign of love and support and
I
trust.
took it more of a I'm glad you're back because he told her to leave and she left.
Yeah, yeah,
And for all he knows, she left.
yeah.
And then she comes back with a needle and thread. And so I took it more of him saying, "Thanks.
I'm
I'm
glad
glad
you're back.
I'm glad you
But it's
stayed."
also him showing love back to her.
Yeah.
And so I'm like okay, I'm okay with but I love that they spent that moment to show that hand grasp
Mhm.
because of what's coming next. And so I just I'm just
I keep hearing that. I keep hearing what's coming next. Hasn't gotten here yet.
they set the cat they set the cafe on fire. And just saying in the trailer they set the cafe on fire.
Okay.
Um that Duke had died in a grease fire. We'll get there in a minute. But I just they continue to impress in this episode. Is it just another example? Before we started, I was looking on IMDb to make sure I got everybody's names right and whatever. It's 9.2 as an overall story so far out of 10 on IMDb. I don't know what it is on Rotten Tomatoes, but everybody who's online talking about this show is saying how good it is, and it's not a fallacy. It is actually this good.
Yeah.
And they spend another episode. I made the joke when at 7 o'clock we're here in Arizona. At 7 o'clock, it's time to cry at the zombies show. And this was not a cry I didn't shed tears like I have in previous episode, but this was definitely an emotional one with
Yeah.
Riley. What happened with Riley?
Yep.
And I think I don't think I'm as emotionally devastated because Riley decides to live out as much time as she can with Ellie.
Yeah. Well, and we knew going in what was going to happen.
Right.
That Riley was going to die and that Ellie was going to get bit.
Right.
I mean,
right.
we've known that.
Right.
So
Yeah. It's so good. So that is our thoughts and conversation and reaction to episode 7 of The Last of Us, called Left Behind, which is what the name of the DLC was. Let us know what you thought of this, our discussion and our reaction to it in the discussion in the comments down below. See, I use comments all the time, and if I try to change it, now it's discussions. Let us know what you thought of this episode and our reaction to it in the comments down below. Please be nice. That's a requirement around here. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. Follow us on all social media stuff, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Links in the description down below. And until next time, cult members, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.